everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I have my August wrap up for you. This month I did do a mid-month wrap up, so this is going to be the books I read in the second half of the month. I will link the mid-month wrap up down below if you haven't seen it already. So let's just get into the books. So in the second half of August I read 13 books. The first one was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. I feel like this has been everywhere. It's super popular right now. This is obviously a memoir written by Jennette McCurdy about her childhood in acting and mostly her relationship with her mom and how her mom was kind of forcing her into acting when she wasn't really, super interested in it or anything like that. I did a whole review video on this book, so I'm not going to go too much into it. I will link that review video in the description as well if you haven't seen it yet. And I gave this one 5 stars. Obviously, I feel like everyone gives this book 5 stars. It's one of the highest rated books I've ever seen on Goodreads, and it was really good. Like I said, not going to talk too much about it. Next, I read Twisted Love by Huang. I have been seeing this book everywhere, this whole series. I feel like everyone has. It's one of those like TikTok series that everyone's been talking about. And this first one is sort of an enemies to lovers, brother's best friend kind of thing, where this girl's brother, I can't even remember where he goes. He goes off somewhere. I think he's like studying abroad for a year or something, and he asks his best friend to keep an eye on his sister, and he decides he's going to move in beside her to do that. And her and her friends just think this guy is so like weird and like mysterious, and they're like, oh, we're gonna like basically like provoke him kind of thing. And so they start doing all these like stupid little pranks to him and stuff. And I don't know, this whole series I felt like really the reason it's hyped is for the smut, to be honest. Like, the series has like 4 or 5 star smut, but like with 2-star plot lines. Like, the plot lines in these books are nothing new or interesting or unique. They are very much like been done before kind of things. And so I just wasn't really vibing with that. I gave this one 3 stars, and this one was probably my second favorite out of the 3 that I did read. Next I read Twisted Games, which is number 2 in that same series, and this one I gave 3 stars to as well, I think. This one follows a princess and her bodyguard, essentially, which again is like a very common storyline, been done before, and there wasn't anything about this one that particularly screamed unique to me. It was very interchangeable with the books that I've read with this trope before, so it wasn't something that I was super in love with. Like I said, I gave it 3 stars again, because it was okay. Like I said, the smut was good, and that was about it. Plotline was okay, wasn't a super huge fan. I think I'm honestly just starting to realize that I can't trust TikTok's recommendations, because I have either really hated or not liked almost every romance that I've picked up because of TikTok. And the only reason for that I can even think of is that I think a lot of TikTokers aren't super into reading. Like, they read more like casually, which is like totally fine. Like, I'm not saying that that's like bad, but you also have like a much smaller pool of books to compare it to. So for someone who only has read maybe 20 romances in their lifetime, like, this series may seem like really groundbreaking and exciting. But if you're someone who's already read hundreds of them, you're probably gonna be like, okay, there's better out there because you've already read it. And I sort of feel like that's where TikTok sort of comes in with the recs, is a lot of the people I think on TikTok that are, big book talkers and are really big into like hyping up certain books, I feel like a lot of them are very new readers, which again is like nothing wrong with that. I myself am like a decently new reader, but I think that is why I'm not vibing with their recs as much. Is just, they're probably great if you've never picked up a romance, but if you've read hundreds, they're just a little underwhelming. Then I read Twisted Hate, which is the 3rd book in the series, and this one was actually my favorite. I gave this one 4 stars. I think this one is an enemies to lovers, sort of opposites attract kind of thing, I guess. And this one follows 2 characters who you sort of see in the first 2 books kind of constantly getting on each other's nerves, and in this one they obviously end up getting together. And I did really like this one. It gave it 4 stars, like I said. I thought the plot in this one was a little bit better, but I think it was more just the fact that it had to do with like tropes that I enjoy, whereas the other ones weren't really tropes that I particularly care about. And so I think that maybe that was why I liked this one more. I don't know that it was necessarily like a better plot line or anything like that, but to me it was a better book. But maybe that's just me. I don't know if I'll pick up the 4th one in the series. If I somehow get the audiobook, like my library gets it or whatever, then maybe I will check it out just like to have something to read. But they're not like my all-time favorite series or anything like that. Next, I read Hooked by Emily McIntire. This is a darker romance based on Peter Pan, but it's not really like a retelling or anything like that. It just has the characters' names. And in this one, we are following Hook, who is planning to go after Peter by dating his daughter Wendy, basically. But I don't know, I think I gave this one 3 stars. I didn't vibe with this one either, which I was really sad about, because if you know me, you know I love Disney, so anything that is even loosely based on Disney, I am there for. And this just, I don't know, it seemed kind of boring. I hate when books are like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, win the girl and to like make someone else angry, but the girl just like doesn't really care that that's going on, and I don't know, it bothers me, and this book did that, and I just didn't love it as much as I was hoping. I would probably continue on with this series just because I'm curious to see what the other books are like. I know the second one I think is based on The Lion King, which is kind of cool, but I just didn't get as much out of this as I was hoping to. I do think I liked this one maybe a little bit more than the Wicked Villain series by Katie Robert, which is like the only other Disney like dark romance fairy tale type thing I can even think to compare this to. But I just didn't really love it. It was just very simple, I guess, in its approach to the topics it was dealing with. Next, I read a duet. The first one is called The Devil by Ashley Jade, and the second one is The Devil's Advocate. These two obviously go together. They're a duet, they're not standalones. And this was one of the craziest like books I've ever read. I think I gave both of these 4 stars. I really enjoyed these. They're the kind of books that you can't put down, and there's so many like twists and turns in them that you're just like constantly guessing what's happening, and even if you're trying to guess, you're not guessing right because there's just so many like layers to what's going on in the story. And I thought these were both really good. I'm usually like, for whatever reason with duets, I find I usually love the first one and the second one always lets me down. But with this one I didn't find that was the case. I really enjoyed both of them. Like I said, it's one long continuous story. This would be a really good one if you're looking for just like one of those crazy books that sort of gets you like sucked into the book right off the bat and you can't put down. Like if you're trying to avoid a reading slump or you're in a reading slump, I feel like this would be a good duet to, you know, read in that time. And it is a darker romance. The guys in this book are both kind of nuts, and there is a love triangle. I feel like I should put that out there. It's really like nothing I've ever read before, but it's also one of those things that I can't tell you much about it because it will literally spoil everything. I will say the synopsis of the first book has almost nothing to do with what the first book is actually about. So if you read the synopsis and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is for me, it's literally not even really like the synopsis. The synopsis is more like a summary of the entire duet, I guess, even though it's like written on the first book, which is sort of strange. But like I said, I did really enjoy this. I think it's a really good, like fast-paced, super crazy kind of book. Next I finished Addicted After All by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the final book in the Addicted series. I am still filming a reading vlog for this, which I'm hoping to at some point upload. It's taking me forever to get through these books, so I'm really sorry about that. But this was the last Addicted book. I finished this. I gave it 5 stars. I really loved the end of this book, I found. That was what really got to me. It was probably a 4-star read through most of it, but I just found sort of the things that happened towards the end of this book were really cute and I really appreciated. And I'm still reading the series. I am still enjoying it. And so like I said, there will be a reading vlog for that out eventually, so I'm not going to get too much into it because all my feelings will be in that reading vlog. Next I read Midnight Lily by Mia Sheridan, and I picked this book up so randomly. It was on Hoopla. It was a Mia Sheridan book. You know, I love Archer's voice, so I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. It sounded kind of weird, you know, the synopsis mentions this girl in the woods that this guy is seeing, and it just sounded interesting. I was sort of imagining like a female version of Archer's voice, you know, this girl being in the woods, kind of away from society and whatever, but this book was nothing like that at all. I gave this book 3 stars. And honestly, I think I would downgrade it to 2 stars, maybe, to be honest. I have never in my life finished a book and been as confused as I was at the end of this one. The author never plainly states what is actually happening in the book, and that's important. I know that probably means nothing if you haven't read this book, but like, it needed to be stated what was going on because nobody knows. Like, I finished this book and I immediately was looking for videos, reviews, like, I went through so many Goodreads reviews just trying to understand what even happened in this book because I had no clue. And apparently there's like a Facebook group that Sheridan started to talk about this book because so many people were asking her questions about it. And apparently there's like a description in that Facebook group, but it is like 6 years old and I don't think anyone's even active in it anymore. So I have no idea how to even find out what really happened in this book. I think I figured it out. And to be honest, when I figured it out, it just made me hate the book even more because I thought it was really stupid. This book just had so many plot twists that it was like impossible to keep up with what was even going on anymore because every time you thought, you know, that this was happening, they were like, oh no, it's actually this. And then when you got on the page with this, you're like, okay, so that's what's happening. They're like, no, this is happening. And you're like, okay, like now I'm confused. And then they're like, okay, now this is happening. And it just kept like switching the whole story basically, like every like 10 pages it felt like. And it was very hard to grasp what was going on, what was happening, who was who, like literally the whole thing is just a mess in my brain. I was so angry when I finished this book that, like I said, I went through so many reviews and things just looking for someone to explain to me what happened in this book, and I just got more and more annoyed. To be honest, I never thought I'd give a Mia Sheridan book 2 stars, but like I think this one kind of deserves it. It was just absolutely nuts. Like, that's the only way I can even think to describe this book. And it's one of those books that I can't even really tell you what it's about because it would all be like spoilers because the entire plot is a spoiler. And it's crazy. It really is. Like, if you want to read something incredibly frustrating and super crazy, like, pick this book up. But if you don't want that, don't read this. And I probably will never, ever, ever reread this book ever again because I was so angry when I finished it. Next I read Love at First Fight by Carrie. This is a short little book. I don't think it's that long. The audiobook is only like 6 hours. So it's a pretty short little book. And this one follows a girl whose name is Cass, and she is dating this guy Justin. And they have rented out this like summer home in the Hamptons for the summer, and with all of his friends. And the sort of plan is that they're all gonna go, but they're not staying there the whole summer. Like, a lot of them have to come back to the city for work during the week, and other people work different days. So basically, like, all these people are just gonna be in and out of this house for the course of the summer. And right before that's about to happen, her boyfriend Justin breaks up with her and says, oh, I'm moving to Singapore for a year and I don't want to be attached when I'm gone. So he just like breaks up with her in a text and tells her he's leaving. And she's kind of like, okay, I don't know what to do now. And she's like, you know what, I'm gonna go to this house anyway, like, I paid my part, like, whatever. But all of his friends are there, and one of his best friends, Smith, is also there, and he has been just like super nasty to her since she first met him, and she doesn't really know why. She just thinks he's like the world's biggest jerk, and so she's kind of trying to avoid him, and he's still like poking fun at her and stuff. And it sort of goes from there. They've kind of always, Smith has like always kind of had a thing for her, but she doesn't see it because he's been such a jerk to her. And I just thought this was really cute. Like, I almost don't want to classify this as enemies to lovers because she is so sweet to him. Like, she doesn't really do anything to provoke him or like get back at him or anything. In the book, she sort of is just starting to do that, but she's always kind of just ignored him and like not really paid attention to him. And so I don't want to call it enemies to lovers because I don't feel like to her he's an enemy, and he definitely likes her. I feel like it's almost more on the lines of like a bully romance maybe, because he's definitely like mean to her, but it's all very one-sided. So maybe this would classify more as a bully romance than an enemies to lovers, but overall I did really enjoy it. It was a fun little summer book, and I thought it was really cute. Next, I read Fuel the Fire by Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is another one that again will be in the Addicted Calloway Sisters reading blog, so I'm not going to get too into it. I gave this one, I think, 5 stars as well. I'm always surprised I rate these books 5 stars because usually when I start the book, I'm like, okay, this is maybe a 4 star. I'm not like super loving it, but by the end, I'm just like obsessed. So I've been giving most of them 5 stars. This one is Rose and Connor's final book, and I do enjoy them more than I thought I would. At the beginning, Rose and Connor were my least favorite couple, and I find that especially within this book, I really started to enjoy them, even to the point that when I finished that book, I rated them like above Reich and Daisy in my like tier of couples. And so I've been enjoying the series. Like I said, there will be a reading vlog for all of them, so I'm not going to get too into it. Gave this one 5 stars, really enjoyed it. Next was Smut by Karina Halle, and this was sort of an interesting book. It's a little bit older. It follows 2 college students who are both in a writing class together, but the guy is a business major and the girl wants to be an author, but her whole family is kind of against it. They think it's not a real job and that she should like focus her schooling on something that would actually get her a job and like make her money, basically. And she ends up being partnered with this guy Blake, who his dad runs this like dying bookshop, so he is in school for business and he's taking this writing class on the side because that's what he really wants to do. And he is in her class. She kind of hates him because she's heard him like mumble a couple things about her that weren't exactly nice, and she just kind of avoids him, but they end up getting paired up for their final project together and it goes really well. They end up writing this little novella together, and then the guy Blake kind of realizes, he's like, hey, did you know that, you know, romance books are selling, you know, X amount, and like you can self-publish and like get rich basically, and like I could save my bookstore and you could make money and we could write together under a pen name. And he's like basically getting all hyped up about this, and he thinks he can do it on his own, but then he's like, I can't write the love parts, so I need you to be my partner for that. And so it sort of follows their journey of, you know, writing these books together under a pen name which no one knows, and they're kind of, you know, it's really like was an interesting book because it gets really sort of into the self-publishing world and, you know, the difference between the people that sort of write like fantasy books versus like the really quick like cheesy titled erotica books. And I thought that was interesting. Like in this book the focus was that, you know, if you write these cheesy erotica books, you can get on the map kind of, and then get an agent to write the fantasy book that you've always wanted to write, which I thought was interesting, just sort of like seeing an author's take on that. And like obviously it's not an industry that I have any experience in, but I thought that that was kind of an interesting way of looking at it. And I will say, like, this book does highlight a lot of like, I think the issues that have come up with TikTok with romance, like with the people on the covers and like people being embarrassed and different things like that. This one definitely touches on that. This guy's dad that runs the bookstore refuses to stock romance because he doesn't think it's real literature, and it just like really sort of deals with a lot of like issues surrounding romance books, which I thought was really interesting as well. I gave this one 4 stars. Did really enjoy it. Thought it was pretty unique for what it was. And lastly was the remaking of Corbin, Wale by Roan Parrish. This was actually on my September TBR, but I ended up reading it in August. And I really liked this one. I gave it 4 stars. I almost gave it 4.5. This is one of those just like super sweet, like cozy romance books. Like it was just literally the only word I could think to describe this is sweet. Like the guys in this book were just so cute. It is an romance between Alex and Corbin, and Alex has inherited his mother's bakery basically, and he comes back home to start running it. And he is there all the time, and he sort of notices Corbin like sitting in the corner, and he'll like come order coffee and then just sit and draw all day. And he's kind of, you know, intrigued because Corbin just like doesn't seem to go anywhere. Like he sits in this coffee shop all day, and he's like, you know, what's his deal kind of thing. And he asks like the other employees about him, and they're like, oh, he comes in all the time, your mom used to let him sit there, like, you know, he just like comes in and draws. And Alex just becomes more and more interested with him, and he starts, you know, like bringing him snacks and different things to his table so that they can talk. And then he starts inviting Corbin to help him bake things, and this one was just, like I said, really, really sweet. I read this one because I heard it had like fall vibes, which I will say, if there's a holiday that this surrounds, it's mostly Hanukkah. But I will say that it did have, like, at the beginning, they're, like, baking together, and it was very, like, cozy, atmospheric type vibes, which definitely are great for the fall. And just, like, I feel like there's almost, like, a hint of a magic element in this, but it's not fantasy. Like, I don't want to, like, say that that's in here because it's not. But there's, like, a little bit of, like, you're sort of wondering what's going on with Corbin and different things, and I feel like that sort of lends itself to fall and like the Halloween vibes and different things. But overall, like I said, I thought this was really sweet. It's an romance, obviously, and just like a really cute, different book. It reminded me a lot of Wolf Song by TJ Klune, just in how the characters were with each other. Like one of them's a little bit different, but the other one just doesn't care. and I thought it was really cute. I really enjoyed it. And so those are all the books I read in August. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I'll see you next time.